A crew just got a really big stick right here. Just FYI. Hi, good afternoon. Hello. This one had a really good move today too off the lows. NVIDIA also had a pretty good retracement back and looks like it's engulfing. A lot of these look very, very similar just because obviously ES is retracting and retracing here, but I do think ES has some chance to engulf, but they'd have to get moving pretty quick. So I had some odds opening up around this window here. We'll see if they can get moving. I'm just gonna set some alerts around our 6708 or 7608, sorry, 7610. These are really big neutral ranges for ES, specifically around here, that 1112 spot. Hence it's struggling here because really it doesn't technically owe us much more than this range in here. This is a pretty straightforward week, I think. Early in the week, we knew that we had to hold our 75 70s, 75 80s, specifically around 7571. If we held above that, then we had some good odds for retracements continuation. They did a pretty good job, I would say, sustaining above 75, 78, 81, 82, this range in here. Initially, they held off 75 after stalling 2122, which was our target in this range in here. They stalled exactly 7623, which were my overnight targets, if you guys remember, from Monday. And then they brought it back down. So this secured us basically an odd of holding core. So this here, I mentioned it Monday from the overnight. This here helped us hold here, which then helped us come back and retest here. And we still had some room for risk, which was basically used and recycled on upside. In other words, this little move right here was essentially because we still had room on downside to be taken back to our 7566 support, which is here. This is on the report. 7566 is where risk really increases. Okay, so and 71, so you can see that they did a really good job in holding, avoiding 6671, pushing, but then no continuation up. This is where there was the differential in range. Okay. We had the highest odds for range to occur on the 3rd. So if they didn't clear, they would recycle it back down. So then they stalled again, brought it back, took this down right back to core, stalled neutral overnight. This was part of the issue for overnight, by the way, was them stalling neutral right here. So like they tested 09 but couldn't get it much more above the 0910 to push to 22. So there was a reduction here too, FYI. So this here, not breaking at least to 2122, I do think that that caused some reduction in range. And again, specifically for them not pushing to our channel area, weekly target is 7644. So you can kind of see how this occurred there. This was the 7610 stall overnight versus tagging at least 7621, which equaled range reduction of up to 12 points, hence not tagging 7644. Okay. Then they basically did the same thing where like they brought it back to the bottom of the zone, came back, cleared, and you can see like this range is very, very similar to support. Okay, so differential between this hold right here, because they could have tested it, but they stalled, takes you right back to this area in here. Okay. After stalling and then not holding, this was kind of the bigger issue, is when they came and breached back beneath 7608, 7610. And you can see that they stalled core ranges quite a bit before getting that full reversal back here. So let's go back a bit. This was on the 3rd. This was overnight. So overnight, they kept stalling between these core and neutral ranges up until they finally breached back here, okay? The good thing was here is they didn't fully break down. They still had some room back to 6.6 and 7.1, like you can kind of see here. And I noticed that even when they broke back up over the zone, like over these areas here, they still broke up by a few points. So like this range in here, and I'll show you in a second, versus like this range in here. Again, it was pretty close to 12 points. Okay, especially off like the zone area. Do you see where they stalled? Especially off like an 8.7, 8.8. Okay, so that was one of the first bigger stalls, was this range in here. But they were trying to sustain. The only thing is was 7.597 enough? Most people would have looked at that and been like, oh, they went back over weekly OR, that's enough. Would that have been enough? What do you guys think? I would say no. We needed back neutral, okay? Is everyone on the same page? We needed to get back to 7508, okay? This is the area that would have likely protected us, reduced range. This was failure to retrace 7608, okay? So what could that mean for downside? Because this is where, basically you have to do something like this. If you're going to hold 7.1, you have to get back into the zone and try getting back to this area here, okay, to reduce risk. So they obviously did not do that. So what could then happen in this case? And this is on the weekly report. Well, obviously if you stall 8.8, which they clearly did right here, right, you can see it. You can see the 6.6 breach right here. Remember how I was saying back in here how like they break up like just by a little tiny bit, but then they also breach below by a little tiny bit. This was kind of the same thing right here. Okay, and them going beneath 6.6 I think was definitely part of that volatility or that issue, because you can see that they stalled right at 8.8. Which is still, it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it means it'll probably hold lower support and get back there, but it still means it's not high enough to trend higher before going lower. So we had very high odds that 1, they didn't break into the zone. 2, they didn't break neutral. 3, they failed 6.6 and 7.1 and held 6.2, which 6.2 is, that's a pretty risky area. Okay, meaning that they'd have to have the full reset. I would rather hold 2.2 than 6.2. Okay, I would rather go back to 75.50 or 75.20s than hold the 60s. 60s keep volatility alive. You're better off going lower at that point, and that's exactly what they did. Okay, they took it back to 7532, and then finally held around that 2.7, 2.8, 2.3 support. Okay, on this, that's a core to core move basically. So core to core, so like this green area to this green area, and they did a really good job holding core ranges overnight. Okay, and they indeed held 7.52322 support. So where's our anchor? Where is it? Here. Okay, That's a solid hold, I would say. Let me set this to maybe a 5-minute. Because they had time to come back and reduce and break down, but they didn't. They held the 75.20s. 75, 22, 23 held. Okay. And more specific to like coming back to these areas in here too. This was our next downside support. 5.5, 5.6 is like mid-means. This was a decent retracement overnight back over 5.5. These are all in the report, but these are the support spots, like 5.5, 5.6, or 5.4. And now they're right back into the zone. So two things I noticed this morning. One, we opened at the top of the zone. Okay. Do you see this? Right here? Like not usually 4.9, 4.8 is like top of the zone, which implied that we would have pretty good odds of avoiding breaking down and staying stuck in the zone because we digested this overnight, correct? We didn't get the best break this morning. I would have preferred an immediate break over 6.6. So what kind of price action could this entail? Like I could tell immediately off the open, look, around 7 points here, and then within the first few minutes, okay, they stall 5.7 and 6.1. What does this mean? What kind of PA could this imply? What do you guys think? Specifically off like the way that they were trading things this morning. What kind of PA could this imply? It's not that they're not breaking, they are. It's just not like the cleanest break, like an open over 4.9, 5.1, 5.2, an immediate break of 5.8, 6.6, 7.1 would have been more ideal. But they did a really good job of holding above the means. They never broke back down into the channel. This was a solid hold here over 4.9. Okay. And then you can see that they then started holding better over, they stalled 7.1 right here initially. Okay. Then they recycled it back down. So it's very, very obvious, I think. Like you can see it. Okay. What is this implying? What kind of PA is this? Like if they would have just broken 7.1 right here, okay, they would have probably pushed to here. You wouldn't have had that hour of going back down. Okay, you would have pushed back over 8.1, 8.2, those initial weekly support. What was this implying? What kind of PA? Same with the 8.8 stall. Okay, even though they eventually brought it back. Again, it's like they've been recycling like close to 12, 9, 13 points. What was this doing? If they would have just pushed it initially, you probably wouldn't have had what? What does this do? It's not that it doesn't get you to your end goal, but it does cause a lot of what? What is this doing? And that's why they probably open in like the upper channel, but not quite in the means. And that's probably why they take out 5.5, but not 6.6. That's probably why they'd stall 8.8. And then hold 5.5. What kind of price action is this, guys? What are they doing? $30 people watching and not one of you know what they're intentionally doing here with PA? Interesting. What's the big area here? They're obviously stalling you guys. They're delaying a little bit. Why? What's the area that had initially caused us to recycle down in the first place? Here, right? When they initially stalled here. Correct? When they didn't get back over 08, 10, this area here. That push down range. That failed weekly low. Okay, then they couldn't retrace. What's the big area from the support, from the weekly report? Yeah, it's digestion, but it's like slower intentional delay because we only have so much range, right? What's the most important area for the week? In terms of, at this point, in coming back in terms of retracing. What keeps the odds alive? What's our most important structural support that I just mentioned? This. Okay? Yes, you're not wrong, Katie, but I'm talking about like right now for like what's gonna keep odds alive. What did we need last week in the first place, right? So getting back to this neutral area is what's going, this is now the bullish path. Does that make sense? Like I know it's not a bullish area, but that's the bullish path to get us back to give odds for like the 5th and 8th. And it's also the area overnight that basically failed, which is what took us back down lower. And it makes sense, like a neutral failure, right? In a bear zone, failing neutral. Just using base theory, it makes sense, but these are also the calculated ranges, right? That we had from back in here. So again, like these areas here, right? Like let's not forget like that area, but again it's also these, right? So if I do this in order, then it'll be easier to understand, but let's put them in like order from like, so they avoided this, which is good. I should probably note this was avoided, okay, which is good. We really did not want to get back to 75, 15, 17, 18 this week. 7520s were multi-confluence area, which we already discussed. This is where we ended up opening. Okay. This is where they cleared. Okay. I'm just fixing this, okay? Just give me 1 second so that you guys have it. Okay, this is where they got stuck. And then this is basically where we are. Okay, so does that make sense? There. Okay. Do you see this? Okay, so basically this area was avoided. 7520s had multi-confluence. That was a really huge spot around 7523, 24. Okay. This area here is where they opened us today. Okay, so they opened us at the 466. Okay? Does that make sense, you guys? Like, they opened us at the 466 area, which means, and then they cleared this range here in the open, like in the first half. This is kind of where they stalled. This is the next important spot. This range in here. Okay, 7610, 7612, 08, 11, 13. This is basically what took us failing here and not retracing here is what took us back to here, to the 7520s and to the channel. So this is a huge spot, but once we get past here, do you see how it'll get us back in those 461 point ranges, like back to one? So basically once 7610 to 7614 neutral area is cleared, we have odds to get back to here, basically back to our 461, 466 point ratios. Okay, does that make sense? So this clearing and where they opened, they actually opened off 461, 466 point intervals. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but even though it seems like a lower odd or like a lower area, so it's more of like the path that's important right now is 7608, 7611. Was that an important area for us last week? This area here, was this an important spot for us last week? Back in here. What was our weekly target last week? What was our weekly target last week? Last week we were looking for 7608, 7612, 7614. Specifically if core areas do not stall, which they did, hence we got to 7611. Okay? And this was right on the report. Okay, so prior week's targets, we were looking for 7608, 7610, 12. That's going to play a huge role again today, okay? Because it's kind of like testing both ends, resetting. Does that make sense? And it's also our, like, you have to also remember, like, what days. are linked right now. So let's go back. Okay, so June 8th, we're already looking at the 4-day. 2-day flips over obviously on the 8th, so we've got until tomorrow. So we still have a lot of odds to engulf on some wider frames. This flips over on the 8th. Again, lots of odds to engulf. There's lots of outside bars forming right now. 2-day, 3-day, 4-day, etc. that don't flip till the 8th. Which means we can take out highs before when? When could you take out highs if that's the case? And this is why they could move it a little bit slower. This flips on the 8th. This flips on the 12th. Some of these flipped over today and yesterday. Tomorrow. If that flips on the 8th, when would you take out highs? How would you take out highs on Tuesday? You take it out tomorrow. Tomorrow's the last day before that candle flips over. Before Monday. Right? Because that would be your last day's Friday. No, it's okay. There's nothing to be sorry about. But see, most of these flip over then, so we don't really even have like too much of a window anyway for that. Okay. This went into an inside bar until June 25th. So does that, oh. Tomorrow. Okay. I don't know if they'll keep this stuck all the way till month end, but not breaking highs by tomorrow could keep us stuck till month end. Does that make sense? Because the 7640s is huge. I know it feels like this week feels long. And I think it's because we've been in like the same ranges, but okay, so obviously this area is going to end up being a really big spot, and it makes sense because this is the spot that they filled last night and when they couldn't retrace. And if you're paying attention, that's kind of when liquidity started to come in. Like, look, you see it specifically here, and then they broke it down. That was like the bigger short. This basically was the range that was taken from us too, okay, on like these uptrends. These are probably like the 44 to 32 point ranges, but I would bet anything that these would have for sure given us like breaks to the 50s, 40s, so on and so forth. Let me just delete this, keep this clean. So that being said, could this limit today a little bit? Maybe if they don't fully want to push today. We would have those odds of expansions from core to core if they push today. So that would mean if they push highs today, then we would have odds of getting 50s and potentially 70s tomorrow, okay? If they don't push today and they keep this stuck in these ranges, then they're probably going to cap weekly range around 7632, 7644 like we initially had planned anyway. Okay? What area is the big area to break at this point? Please do not get this wrong. I just went over it for like the last half hour. So which area is the big area to break now? Because technically this is what would accelerate us. I'm sorry, I have my trays and I feel like I'm talking with a lisp. I hate these things. Yes. Okay. Yes, like that 7608, 7611, that's going to get us out of that neutralized range, and that'll get us back to this area here, okay? So and it's funny because 75454851 was off the low range from the 21st. Isn't that funny? And off the closing range. So basically market opened wanting to protect May 21st lows. And closing around here, if they decide to keep it pinnable, would mean that they want to protect the closing highs. Like they'd want to protect 7, 6, 10, 12. Those are linked to the 21st highs. Okay, so that's also important to kind of factor in. They're also linked to the, like the 461, 466 ranges are the 20th closing ranges around 7613, 7615, 7618. I do find that pretty interesting. So it's like a protection of lows. It equates to getting the high ranges from those days, which would be these areas here. So let's see. They kind of kept it pretty stuck during the last hour. There's some liquidity coming back here into 3 o'clock. These were some of the ones that were linked to like the morning lows this morning, around like 7:30, 7:38 this morning. But that's why stalling here, I think, is keeping us a little bit stuck, specifically around that 227, 230 period. I did want to see maybe by like the midpoint, so because this would have been the calculated time this morning off lows. I did want to see hi Booth. I did want to see maybe if there's some odds for real time, but I think they'd have to get moving pretty quick because a lot of these are for after session, and I think they depend on what they do here. So they fall into like right into the close around like the last like 15-20 minutes. And I also wanted to see off the 4 p.m. close if we might have some odds, because I don't think that 227 226 period was terrible, but so half of this range would be around like 47 minutes or so. I think that's coming up right here. Okay, so there are some mid calculated real-time odds coming up right here. Calculated odds linked to real-time session close. Okay, and the condition would be that they'd obviously have to clear 7608, 7609, that's 7610. So I feel if they're able to clear by this period here, then we still have some odds to get to some, maybe some neutralized areas, 76, 14, 18 in real time. I'm not sure if we'll get the full break, but at least clearing here is going to give us the odds of 76, 21, 23 retest. Okay, so let's see. I know this is when they triggered 08, but that's not really the calculated time. Hello. Maybe this is what could extend us or something. Let's see. Oh, that's interesting. The time that they actually hit high of day is linked to the last 2 minute, like the last 5 minutes of the close at 3:53, 3:54. That's when they actually triggered 7608. That was the first trigger of 7608. So these times are tied to initial 7608 trigger. Okay. I'll make this yellow because this is linked to here. Okay. These are linked to low. Okay. And this is also linked to that low range, but to 4 p.m. around 3:12, 3:13. So let's see. There's some odds here. What time is it? 3:06. What do you guys think? You think that they clear 7608, 7608, 75 here? There's some good odds coming up. This would be the area that we'd want to clear around here, this range in here. So far, that looks like a pretty promising stick. We just want to at least engage with these neutral spots. That's the first test of 7608, 75. Let me mark the actual areas here. 76, 11, 12, 13. It's mainly this range in here. This area here where I have the alert set. Okay, these are the really big spots. 0875 is the first area. This is where I said liquidity could start picking up a little bit. So far it is. Not great, but better than this. For those that want to follow. I forgot about YouTube. I really hope we get 7620s at least. That would be nice. We'll see. 7613, 7600 SPX. Okay, that's interesting because that would make sense if they want to take it to that 7612, 13, 14 area. CSCO swing's still doing really good too. Yeah, I mean, the thing is I know that this is technically enough, but I, based on where they held overnight, the 20s would obviously be better, but these points in time are linked to like the actual real-time session close. So I really want to see if they keep it at least above 05, but like closer to 08, because this would give us a pretty good idea on like where they want to pin us today and whether or not they want to keep us stuck. This is linked to end of session. This was like the midpoint for the actual session close at 343. Yeah, they would kill 0 DT contracts. I would probably be careful with those. Like the swing long is one thing, but 7605 neutral hold off 3:14 p.m. That implies that they might want to keep it stuck the last like 10-15 minutes into the close, but there is a window that reopens here. The only thing is they really reduced expectations by keeping us stuck within this range because this is linked to the actual close. Okay. And we'll see what kind of negation 6 they have after here. Like they're trying to hold this neutral range. The thing is a lot of these structures don't flip till the 8th, so they still have time to break range tomorrow or overnight is the thing. I think so too. This is still really progressive, especially ahead of the 5th, right? Like the fact that they even brought it back to the zone, or 7588, 7595 is good, I think. Like it at least keeps some odds alive heading into tomorrow and next week. Because going back beneath here would have been bad. Like back to 75, 17, 12, 10, 08, that would have been bad. So they still progress pretty nicely in my opinion. We're still within our weekly ranges, basically. Nothing really changed. Tesla's also just been sitting in our spots too, between like 417 and 423.26. Just FYI for Tesla holders. I might have to end the stream, guys. If they're gonna keep this stuck neutral, I really don't want to sit here and stream. But I mean, there are some odds end of day, but I have other things that I have to do. So if anything, I'd rather get that done than sit around. Yeah, it's also just been kind of nesting around our support spot, like in this range here. So hasn't really changed too much. There's a calculated odd near 321 to 324 window. So they could try to retract it back up. This could be easily them reducing range too, because they know that they only have so much to work with, like I said earlier, and that's still too much time. Because if they would have pushed it up 5 points, they would have already taken out the top up 7614 or something. So they could try to push back up from here and try retracting during this window. It's near 321, 323, 324. They might even break a bit earlier, but this was the next period here. What do you guys think? You think that they'll retest 7608, 7608, 75 during this window? I know this price action's not really the most entertaining, but these are the ranges, unfortunately, so there's not really much we can do. I'm gonna end the stream, I think, guys. I have some things I have to do before market close because I have an appointment an hour after market close. So I'd rather get that done than sit and watch ES stuck in a neutral zone, sorry. There's still some odds that they could push like back into this range in here, but I would say them not clearing 7608, 7609, 7610 during this period, probably not. Like I would say that will probably stay stuck. These were some of the max ranges I had for the session today, around 7611, 7613, 7616. The max area I thought we could get to was 7621, 75, 7623. I didn't even think that they would engulf today, to be honest, because of it moving on a 2-day, so still having time for tomorrow. Does that make sense? Like everything flips on the 8th, so the 5th had the highest odds technically to retest 7632, which is why I didn't think that they would do it today unless they cleared during like that 227, 230 period, which means that we probably will stay pinned in this area here. But that being said, I mean, if you're holding contracts, maybe roll them into tomorrow or the 8th. That might be the safer bet. I did have some contracts still left for today that I took off the open this morning, closer to like the 75, 50, 58 to 72 area, like back in here. But I'll only leave like 4 contracts. I might roll them. Like if they push this back over 08, 09 during this period, I think we need at least 11. Okay, so if they can get us around like 10, 11, then okay, yes, there could be some odds that they trigger these areas here. Okay, all right, good luck, guys, and I will see you guys tomorrow. I will put a report out tonight. I did send most of it, but I'll set some conditions. I think you guys have a pretty good idea on what I'm going to say anyway. So far, everything's kind of working the way that we thought it would. This is a really good break, guys, here off our period, so that's good. But just don't get too stuck, because they could keep it stuck too, right? I just don't want you guys to like end up getting stuck in a end of day 0 DTE. This wouldn't be like a good kind of end of day for 0 DTEs in my opinion. Obviously that can change, but the way premiums are moving based on price being stuck makes it a little bit hard, and then they start decaying